Going from the micro level, we'll go to the macro level. And at the macro level, this is a very clean schematic picture of the brain, how it sits in the skull. People, they talk about their livers, they talk about their hearts. They don't talk about their brains as an organ, but it's an organ like any other, much more complex, but it's still an organ just like any other. This is what it looks like with the skull removed. See all these smooth folds, deep crevices. The reason it has all those folds in it is because you're trying to increase the amount of surface area in the brain while not making it any bigger, because it won't go through the pelvic vault to the vaginal canal. So what nature did was it folded it up, crumpled it up like a piece of paper, which keeps it cooler but also increases the surface area and the amount that you can get into a small space. Otherwise, we would have cone heads. And someone in their wisdom decided that cone heads just wouldn't be right, so we went this way. We're going to talk about three major parts of the brain: the brainstem, the midbrain, and the forebrain. We're going to talk about the function of those and how those relate to the heart and mind. But first, we're going to slice it down the middle, and the parts of the brain we're going to talk about is the brainstem is down here. Actually, it's not really in this picture very much. This is the midbrain. This is the feeling part of the brain. This is where emotions come from. This is where our strong emotional impulses come from. And this is the thinking part of the brain. And people don't realize this, but thinking and feeling are two very, very different things. And I'm not going to go into it at this talk today, but differentiating thoughts from feelings is a very important capacity that we really should start teaching children, preschool actually. Because when we think about it, behaviors are always driven by impulses, by feelings. The inhibition of behaviors is always done by thinking. And so if you look at cognitive behavioral therapies, or if you look at behavioral management protocols, or if you look at the, I don't know, I forgot what they call it, the structured behavior intervention programs, they all work on this basic principle that you think before you act. But oftentimes, kids and adults and the caretakers don't know the difference between thoughts and feelings, or how to recognize the difference. It's easily learned, and it's very much worth learning. So this is what it looks like from the outside. This is the brainstem. This takes care of all of the automatic functions of the brain. It takes care of digestion, heart rate, sleep-wake cycles, body temperature, all of the things that you don't even think about. The burrito that you just ate is, you're not even thinking about it, hopefully too much right now. And so all of that is taken care of by the brainstem. So we don't talk that much about it. It's not conscious. The midbrain, the part that I showed you, is here in the middle, in the aqua and the beiges. It's right there, buried in the middle of the brain, about the size of a fist. And then the outside here, this is the cortex, the last thing to develop, the part that's responsible for impulse control, for abstract thinking, for the things we're going to get into more. That's the part that's most vulnerable to the toxins, maternal stress, abuse, etc. in utero. To review, the brainstem back here, lower automatic functions, midbrain up here, the limbic system, the emotional parts of the brain, and then the cortex, the thinking, the abstract reasoning, the music, mathematics, language, learning, auditory processing, all of that, cortex. Last part to the brain to develop, and the part that's uniquely human. So let's go back to the midbrain and talk a bit about emotions. Anger, shame, sadness, disgust, fear, joy, delight, lust, envy, jealousy, affection, enjoyment, frustration. These all sound very, very human, don't they? But the reality is for those of you who have dogs or cats or who work in zoos, these are very common in the animal kingdom. As a matter of fact, animals have all of these emotions. So these emotions are not particularly human because they come from that other part of the brain, the midbrain, and they've spent millions of years of evolution developing. Now, a lot of people don't like that, don't believe me, so I show them this picture. And then they kind of go along, but depending on what part of the country I'm in, I still haven't convinced some folks. So then I show them this picture. And by then, most people usually get it. Okay. So there's different types of emotions, too. There's hardwired emotions, which are genetic. they're part of our genetic endowment, like fear of snakes, fear of heights. Those are hardwired. Okay, those are built into us. And then there's emotions that we are taught. They're called conditioned emotions by the Sufis in particular. And these are things that we're taught to make us emotional. If you're an American, you get emotional when you hear the Star Spangled Banner. But if you're from Bolivia, it probably doesn't do that much for you, the national anthem of the United States. But the Bolivian national anthem does, as does the soccer team. But the point is that these are learned, okay? They're not innate. And there's different kinds of emotions, and knowing the difference is important. Because some of them can be deliberately cultivated. Art, music, appreciation of poetry or literature or things like that. These are emotions that can be deliberately cultivated or inhibited.